Daily Proverb. Ruslan.
Daily Proverbs, a proverb a day will keep the foolishness away. This was the first time in my life following Jesus I really got consistent, was reading the Gospel of John and doing a proverb a day, whatever day of the month it is. That is the chapter that we read. And by the way, the interesting thing about Proverbs is that it's about wisdom. And there's a difference between knowledge and wisdom. Wisdom is about knowledge applied and executed and worked out in real life, whereas knowledge is just about head knowledge. And there's a lot of folks that have head knowledge, but they don't have wisdom. They haven't really lived this thing out. If you want to take an interesting dive about knowledge, head knowledge versus wisdom, you can check out and Google the Dunning-Kruger Effect. I'm not going to get into it now, but needless to say, it is a huge cognitive bias that a lot of people are exhibiting a lot of times on social media, because there's a difference between knowing something in the same way that an artist knows his craft or a designer knows how to design, right? And that's the type of wisdom that the Proverbs is talking about, is that if you actually can understand this way of living, this way of thinking, that it is different than just knowing facts. It's actually about knowing, applying, implementing these ideas and these ways of God. And so today we are in Proverbs chapter 9 and verse 10. It says, "For the fear of the Lord is the foundation of wisdom." This is a reoccurring theme all throughout Scripture. The fear of the Lord is the foundation of wisdom. Knowledge of the Holy One results in what? In good judgment. Okay? Wisdom will multiply your days and add years to your life. If you become wise, you will be the one to benefit. If you scorn wisdom, you will be the one to suffer. First of all, I gotta make this clear that oftentimes we think of the fear of the Lord and we connect it with like a hellfire and brimstone, fearful gospel. Let's scare people. Let's yell at them, right? This is not talking about that sort of fear. This is talking about a reverence for God. This is talking about a healthy fear. This is talking about a fear like, you know, your father can end you if he wanted to, but he doesn't, because he's a good father, right? This is different, right? So my son has a healthy fear for me because he knows that I'm bigger than him, stronger than him, but I love him, and therefore he should listen and cooperate with what I'm doing in his life and the standards and the ways that I'm giving. So this is saying, hey, listen, the fear of the Lord, the reverence of the Lord, the respect of the Lord. Hey, don't be flippant with God. The fear of the Lord is the foundation of this wisdom, this life applied, this knowledge applied, right? Knowledge of the Holy One results in good judgment. The more knowledge of God you have, the more good judgment you can have. And then it goes on to say, well, wisdom will multiply your days and add years to your life. If you become wise, you will be the one to benefit. If you scorn wisdom, you will be the one to suffer. So one, I want to make sure that you guys know that Proverbs is not a book about absolutes, right? Because there are people that will have some form of suffering. There are people that can do all the wise things and tragedy might strike them. We do not control what tragedy life can throw at us, right? We can just control the variables we can control and react to them in the best way that we can react. But Proverbs is speaking more to the generality of life and not to the exception of the rule. Right? Generally speaking, if you live wise, generally speaking, wisdom will multiply your days. Generally speaking, okay? If you have a fear of God, that means you don't have a fear of man, right? If you have a healthy work ethic, which Proverbs talks a lot about, that means you won't sit around and be idle all the time. If you have a healthy understanding of finances and avoiding debt, that means you won't be broke. Right? If you won't be broke, that means you won't have to suffer in ways that broke people sometimes suffer. If we look at something like divorce, for example, the number one reason for divorce is money fights and money problems. Wisdom will multiply your days. If you can avoid divorce and sickness and, right, all those things that come along with not being wise, well, then you can live longer. You can decrease your stress, minimize the heart disease, minimize the anxiety, minimize all these different things. So wisdom will multiply your days and add years to your life. It's interesting because in America right now, for the first time in generations, I think, our life expectancy is shrinking. Depression is up. Suicide is up. Anxiety is up. Diabetes is up. Obesity is up. Heart disease is up. Right? Interesting time that we're living in. And here, it's juxtaposing this and it's saying, no. Wisdom will multiply your days and add years to your life. What is it? What's the crux of this? If you live your life God's ways, generally speaking, you will add years to your life. If you grow in God's wisdom, if you grow in God's ways of doing things, you will be the one to benefit. If you scorn wisdom, you will be the one to suffer. Unfortunately, I know a lot of Christians who claim to love Jesus. However, their day-to-day lives don't really reflect that. They continue making decisions strictly off of the things that make them feel good in the moment. They continue being toxic and gossiping about people. They continue being high-strung because they're stressed out, because they don't properly plan, and they don't live God's ways. And they claim to be Christians. These folks that claim to be followers of Jesus, but there's an incongruence that happens there, and so they don't get the same benefits of living life God's ways, generally speaking. How do we know? How do we know if we're living God's ways? I gave this illustration, and I want to keep coming back to this, and I'll probably make some short form videos to this. I think you have to stop and reevaluate the ATM. How do you know you're living God's ways? Well, we got to stop and reevaluate. What does your ATM look like? What is the ATM? ATM. Your attention, your time, and your money. Your attention, your time, and your money. Let's talk about you living like God wants you to live, you following Jesus. You say that. How does your attention look? Where's your attention going? What are you consuming? What are you listening to? What are you allowing into your spirit? What are you allowing to watch? How is your attention look? What are you thinking about? Right? Are you reading the scriptures? Are you in the Bible? Are you consuming things that are building you up? How does your attention look? That's the A, your ATM. How does your attention look? The second is your time. You say you follow Jesus. How does your time look? If we looked at your calendar and we said, okay, where have you been the last 2 weeks? And someone didn't know you, would there be any indication based on your calendar that living God's ways is actually a priority for you? Would there be any indication of that? Or are you just going to work, going to the grocery store, coming home, going to work? Is there any indication of that based on your calendar and your time? How are you spending your time? Right? A lot of people say they're a Christian, but they don't want to be in church. They say they're a Christian, but goodness gracious, they don't want to do anything to activate that faith. They don't want to put in the time. Right? And then the last one is your money. I know this is the uncomfortable one. Oh my gosh, Ruslan's talking about money. I hope he doesn't go into asking me to sow a seed. No. But how are you doing with your money? How are you doing with your finances? Is there any indication? If we looked at what comes in and what comes out in the discretionary department, is there any indication that you're actually committed to the Jesus thing? Do you give to any ministries? You got to give to mine. Anybody? Do you give to your local church? Do you give to Christian charity? Do you give so that the preaching of the gospel will get forward? I'm not going to get into the 10%, non-10% discussion with you, because that's really a distraction from the heart of the matter, which is this money's become an idol in your life, right? And so when I'm talking about money management, you flinch up. When I'm talking about handling money's God's way, you flinch up. Well, really, if we look, you're not really that generous with your finances. How are your finances? Are you generous? Are you giving? Are you living on a budget? Do you have a plan for the money that God has entrusted you with? Are you saving? Are you getting out of debt? How does that look? When we're talking about God's ways, that's an easy way you can look at it. Write it down. Your attention, your time, your money. How does your attention, time, and money look? And if somebody didn't know you and they looked at those areas of your life, would there be evidence that you are a follower of Jesus? And if I say that and there isn't, well, then you probably know, based on what we talked about in this conversation, some things you need to adjust. Maybe a couple areas you need to adjust. There's no indication that Jesus is your priority in your time. Well, you probably need to go find a local church. Probably need to get into a Bible study. You probably need to spend some more time consuming things that are going to build up your spirit and give you opportunities to serve in a local context with people, right? follow safety protocols wherever you're at, because different countries are different, okay? So hopefully this is making sense, guys. I want to make sure that you guys hear my heart on this. This isn't about trying to shame you. That's not what it's about. It's not about shame. It's about you've been saved by a good God, therefore you should act accordingly. Jesus transformed you, gave you a new heart, new desires, lived the life you couldn't live, died the death you should have died, and therefore wants you to live his way, and that should be reflective in your ATM. So hopefully that's helpful. Let me know what y'all think.
Kingstream Entertainment. Ruslan.
Guys, thank you so much for making it to the end of this video. Make sure you hit that like button and subscribe. But I want to let you know about a 3-day challenge we have coming up for anyone that's looking to get into the YouTube space. If you are an expert in a specific field, if you are an entrepreneur, a business owner, and you're considering getting into the YouTube space because you see the value of reaching a broader audience, we have a 3-day challenge coming up very soon. Make sure you hit the link in the description to sign up so you don't miss it.